Good morning. The Tuesday, April 18, 2017 regular Board of County Commissioners meeting will now be called to order. We'll begin, if you'll please rise. And we'll begin with a moment of silence and reflection for the first responders. And it'll be followed by Pastor Jeremy Redman from the First United Methodist Church, who will give us our invocation, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by County Administrator Jason Brown. Please join with us for a moment of silence for our emergency responders.
Let us pray. Oh God, we'd like to begin our day with gratitude. Gratitude for this great country of ours. Gratitude, Lord, that you planted in the hearts and minds of our founders a dream, a vision for liberty and justice. And God, we thank you for those who've given so much to achieve that liberty and, Lord, to maintain that liberty. And we thank you, God, for those who administer justice. Especially, God, we're mindful right now and grateful for the first responders. God, we ask that you'd bless them and that you'd, God, just build a hedge of protection around them. God, we thank you for this beautiful community you've given us to live in. And God, because you have invited us to do so, we ask for wisdom. We pray for our president and vice president. God, we pray for Congress. We pray for our governor, for our state legislature. And God, we pray for this body of commissioners. Because God, we know that your plans and purposes are for our good, to prosper and not to harm, to give hope and a future. So God, grant your wisdom, we pray. And all of this we lift up with gratitude in our hearts. In your holy name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Good morning again. And we're looking for any additions, deletions to the agenda, any emergency items. Commissioners? County Administrator?
Mr. Chairman, staff would like to pull item 8I for discussion under consent. When we get to
8I
that.
for discussion.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
And that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda for proclamations and presentations is a presentation of proclamation designating the month of April 2017 as Volunteer Appreciation Month. Commissioner Adams will present, and we have quite a host of volunteers, Commissioner Adams. Could we have them all come up?
Of course.
Could we have all of our volunteers come up? We see you at 2 or 3 in the morning at an incident. We see you traveling our roadways, but we want the public to see our great volunteers.
Yes, we have several people here today representing the 31 CAP Road Patrol volunteers, the 13 Marine volunteers, 7 We Care volunteers, 10 Victim Advocate volunteers, and 23 administrative volunteers. So thank you guys, and it is my pleasure to read the proclamation designating the month of April 2017 as Volunteer Appreciation Month. Whereas volunteerism strengthens communities, improves social problems, and enhances the overall quality of life for all citizens, including children, seniors, those who are disabled, impoverished, imprisoned, homeless, physically or mentally ill, or otherwise in need of assistance. And whereas volunteering changes the lives of volunteers in a positive way by increasing self-confidence, self-esteem, and physical well-being, offering the chance to make new friends and providing opportunities to learn new skills and abilities. And whereas volunteering is proven to have a positive influence on businesses that are socially responsible by increasing employee morale, loyalty, and teamwork, and building goodwill toward the company. And whereas nonprofits, charities, community and faith-based groups, schools, volunteer centers, and national service programs in Indian River County have joined together with state and local government in celebration and praise of volunteers who have given tirelessly and selflessly to the service of others. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of April 2017 be designated as Volunteer Appreciation Month in Indian River County, and the board encourages all citizens to promote the spirit of volunteerism, to observe the appropriate activities, programs, and ceremonies supporting volunteerism, and to participate and engage others in volunteer activities now and for as long as they are able. Adopted this 18th day of April 2017 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for all that you do for our community. It's wonderful to have such great volunteers, and you guys do a yeoman's work for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheriff?
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. And on behalf of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, obviously I'm very, very proud of these men and women. This is all commanded by Lieutenant Liddell Young, who is in the back. He is in charge of this particular unit. And the person that really does a lot of the work is Ms. Jarrett Payton, that you all know and love and respect. And she handles the day-to-day operations with the assignments. You see a variety of folks here from not only our Marine unit, but our CAP unit, the cars that you probably regularly see with the yellow lights on the top. You see our dear friend Michael Hyde here, who's always dressed appropriately. But to tell you that not only do these volunteers help us out in the jam day in and day out, but they're members of our community, and that's the key. The dollars that they save us for the dollars that we put in, Mr. Brown would be very proud of the way we manage those. And I'll tell you a quick story. They always say, tell them a story and they'll never forget it. I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I had a gold Crown Victoria police car, unmarked. And I was at the courthouse, nervous and learning my way around, and I locked my keys in the car. So I said, wow. So I'm in the parking garage, and I pick up the phone and I call dispatch, and they weren't sure who I was, and I said, I'll be the one standing in the parking lot in a gold or brown Crown Victoria. And within about 6 minutes, one of the CAP units showed up and opened my car. And I will tell you that we open thousands of cars a year that you're all aware of. And that's just one of the many things we do, from our volunteers and our victims assistance program, which make notification to next of kins on unattended deaths, to our Marine unit, to our traffic control unit, to our units that specialize in behavioral health within our county jail, to our volunteers, over 100 volunteers in the county jail that volunteer not only in theological practices, but as well as AA and NA meetings. This is just a handful, and this is a sample. And I'm very, very proud and honored to be here today, and honored that you recognize our volunteers for this entire week and this entire year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheriff, yeah, I just have to disagree with you a little bit about Michael Hyde's attire. He's not quite complete. He's not carrying the bagpipes with him. So
They're in the van.
next time y'all come, I want to be hearing the bagpipes, Michael. We want to jazz it up a little bit. So thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, just shake hands. Yes, we can.
Oh, please bring
Let's
the
all shake
entire
hands.
team up.
Go that way.
Good morning. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you for all the
Good morning. Roberta, Teddy. Come on up. Please, please. Please. We got Liddell here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. That was my upbringing.
Bertie, you may have to back way up.
Yeah, I know. Gotta get it in the picture. It's very added up.
Thank you. Thank you. We spent our day together and got it going.
Gonna need the wide angle here.
Okay, everybody ready?
Quite a few volunteers, Sheriff.
Cheese. All right, thank you.
All right, good.
Thank you, guys, very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you all once again. Next item is a presentation proclamation designating April 30th through May 6th, 2017 as Small Business Week in Indian River County. That'll be presented by Commissioner Bob Solari, and that'll be presented to Helene Hazeltine. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Helene. I'm very happy this morning to read this proclamation designating April 30th through May 6th, 2017 as Small Business Week in Indian River County. Whereas America's progress has been driven by pioneers who think big, take risks, and work hard. And whereas from the storefront shops that anchor our downtown to the high-tech startups that keep America on the cutting edge, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. And whereas small business owners and entrepreneurs create jobs, drive innovation, and increase America's global competitiveness. And whereas when we support and patronize local small businesses, local jobs are created and local communities preserve the unique culture. And whereas the President of the United States has proclaimed National Small Business Week every year since 1963 to honor entrepreneurs throughout the country. And whereas small businesses help sustain our quality of life by diversifying and strengthening our tax base in Indian River County. And whereas Indian River County supports and joins in this national effort to help America's small businesses do what they do best: grow their business, create jobs, and ensure that our communities remain as vibrant tomorrow as they are today. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of April 30th through May 6, 2017 be designated as Small Business Week in Indian River County, adopted this 18th day of April 2017, and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners. Good morning, Helene.
Good morning. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And thank you, Commissioners, for joining us to recognize the positive impact that small business does have on our community. We're joining hundreds of other organizations around the country in celebrating Small Business Week. And as noted, small business is indeed the backbone of our local economy. We have about 9,500 businesses in Indian River County. That includes the municipalities, the vast majority of which are small businesses, less than 50 employees. And those businesses employ thousands of our local residents. So if I may, I'd like to mention some of the resources and some of the events that are scheduled in the coming weeks that can help startup businesses, entrepreneurs, and those who are already in business. Starting with our economic development website, indianrivered.com. We have a link on there. It's an icon for the Virtual Entrepreneurial Center. And when you click on that icon, it brings you to another page. And on that page is a list of resources, local, state, and federal resources, depending on what stage of business you're in, from startup to possibly stage 3, stage 4. You're ready to launch and go on and do great things. So there's all kinds of resources on that page. And there's a calendar of events there too, so you can look up to see what kind of workshops and training might be available to you as a small business owner or a startup. Our chamber partners with the Treasure Coast SCORE and the Small Business Development Center at Indian River State College. For those of you who don't know, SCORE is a volunteer group of retired executives who can mentor, who can counsel. They provide free counseling to people who are looking to start a business. They also provide a number of workshops throughout the year at our chamber, at the library, at the Sebastian Chamber. Most of those workshops are free. And over the next few weeks, the U.S. Small Business Administration has scheduled a number of webinars that are also free for those who are interested in learning more about marketing, financing, taxes, healthcare, payroll, logo design. So if anyone is interested, certainly they can call us at the Chamber at 567-3491 to learn more about those events, how to register, the dates, and so forth. And lastly, on May 2nd, Indian River State College is holding its 4th annual Entrepreneur and Small Business Conference. It's at the Kite Center at their Fort Pierce campus. That event is free. It's all day. They'll have a number of speakers. And it also provides a networking opportunity for small business owners so they can get to know one another and do business with one another. So thank you for supporting Small Business Week. We really appreciate it and appreciate your support throughout the year. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Shannon. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of March 21st, 2017. And that's a motion by Commissioner Zork, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on informational items, we have a proclamation of retirement award, and I just wanted to acknowledge Ray Jones on his retirement from the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Emergency Services, Fire Rescue, with 26 years of service. Congratulations, Ray. Next item is the consent agenda. 8G Golf. Okay. And Commissioners, anything else that we wish to pull? Item I has been pulled already, and that will be discussed by the county administrator and our attorney, our legal office. Anything further from the board? Is there any member of the public that wishes to have anything pulled for further discussion or clarification? Seeing none?
Move to approve consent agenda as amended.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. The first item to be pulled was by Commissioner Zork, and that's G Golf, the agreement to purchase property for stormwater pollution removal system.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is part of our ongoing public works projects to expand, add additional projects that will clean more water going to the Indian River Lagoon. Just a couple of questions, one on the procedure. I think whenever we look at that we're going to draw water from the canal system, we, as early in the discussion process, need to involve the Indian River Farms representative, David Gunner, which all of us know and love dearly. I did have a conversation with him to ask him what he thought about the site, and it was, he knew about the pilot project, but he didn't know about our future needs of wanting to draft water for this site, and I know we'll probably be able to come to some resolution, but I know when we built the South County turf algae scrubber, where we thought we could draft the water from versus where we ended up, where he allowed us to draft the water from, we had to build about a mile pipeline roughly at the cost of several hundred thousands of dollars, or I don't know what the final price tag was, but it was expensive. Not that that would have changed our site location in that particular instance, but I think if we're going to be in his right-of-way pulling up his water for a considerable site, I think we just need to start the conversations early. And many times he has a lot of interesting ideas that, you know, sometimes are worth kicking around and seeing how they might work in our big picture. But, you know, since we have to work within his right-of-way, and he's very protective of that any input we could get from them earlier in the process, I think, would be just good institutional knowledge to know as our project goes forward. So I'm assuming after we purchase it, we'll start some discussions with them of how we'll get the water out, but maybe in the future we could just move that earlier in the timeline.
Rich Berger, Public Works Director. Keith McCauley actually had conversations with David about us pumping into one of the properties that we were planning on or trying to acquire for this project. He may have forgotten, but we have had that conversation with him.
He was familiar with the pumping of the pilot project, so he was, and I don't know if maybe he's getting the two of them.
My understanding is, and Keith's here to answer any more questions, but basically my understanding is we had that conversation. We're doing the pilot program. It's just a smaller version of what we're going to do once we acquire some right-of-way or some property to be able to construct this, and that we were going to pump out of his canal. With his weir structure being on the east side of 58th,
right.
it was a good location to do that. So he is aware of it. He may have forgotten.
Okay. Secondly, just understanding, and this is more of, I guess, a purchasing question, when we're looking for land for a project, do we typically go out and, I guess we know the range of where the project needs to fit. You do, Keith, because we know we needed to be west of the weir structure. You couldn't be east of it. So we kind of had a defined footprint. But do we also advertise counties looking for property in an area, or do we just look and kind of reach out to those particular owners that were on the canal area?
What we did is we picked, as you can see from the agenda item, we picked out an area that we thought was best served for this project, and we contacted the property owners. We started with the one we thought was the best fit for everything, and then price dictated where we went. Anywhere between 58th and 66 in that area would work for this project, but to be fiscally responsible, we were trying to, we contacted each individual property owner, and if the going rate in that area was sufficient, then we were going to go ahead and make an offer. Some of the property owners did not work with us. In this particular case, the Greens worked with us very well.
Well, great, and I'd like to thank the Greens for working with the county and going through the negotiation process, and Keith, all the hard work you put in on coming up with these innovative projects. And since we shelved the name Coyote Run, I think I would like to nominate that as the token name for this project, since it's the name everybody remembers versus the name we changed the other project to. But we'll get to naming it at a later date. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to move that item forward.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner Zorc, seconded by myself. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and thank you for the clarification. Next item is the, on public items, is a public hearing.
If we
What is that?
could do 8I.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I failed. I'm looking at I, but I needed that. Counselor, on the approval of the Animal Shelter Service Agreement for Humane Society of Vero Beach and Indian River County.
Could you hit the please, Scott? Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. And thank you for pulling this matter off of the consent agenda so I could explain a little bit more of what's going on. Yesterday afternoon, we had a request from the Humane Society to make 5 changes to the matter. If you take a look at your screens now, you'll be able to see 4 of those changes. These are basically carryover matters from the previous contract with the Humane Society to this contract here. The first item up is simply an agreement between the county and the Humane Society to lower the population of unwanted animals carried over from the other contract. The next one that you can see there is that we will not go ahead and put too many livestock animals on their 7 acres. We are mindful of that. Again, carried over from the previous contract. Next is that any animals requiring emergency care would go to the vet first and then to the animal shelter. Fourth, you can see there that deals with the humane disposal of the animals, 3 days for cats and 5 days for dogs. And then the other thing, if you take a look at number 4 on the screen there, there are times when the Humane Society must shelter an animal for quarantine purposes over a 10-day period. If that occurs, whether it's a dangerous dog situation or what have you, if there's litigation involving the animal and the county is involved in that litigation, we would pay an additional $10 per day to defray the cost of sheltering the animal. Staff is in agreement with these 5 changes, additions to the contract, I should say. They're additions, and staff would recommend that the board go ahead and approve the contract with the amendments as put forward. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions? Is there anybody from the public that wishes to add to this discussion? Any clarification, questions? Commissioners?
Move approval.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you. Now, the next item on the agenda is item 10A1, which is a request by Florida Power and Light Company for a special exception use approval for a private heavy utility, the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center, to be located on the west side of 98th Avenue between 4th Street and 9th Street Southwest, Oslo Road. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so at this time, the parties in the proceeding will be Indian River County and Florida Power and Light. I need to ask all of our county commissioners to disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations. And we'll begin with Commissioner Solari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No site visits, but I did have one conversation with FP&L's many, many months ago about this. They came in to basically describe the project, and I think to just feel out if we had any particular problems with it, which I didn't at that time, and we didn't discuss anything in great deal or any particular problems or aspects of it which might be problematical.
Thank you, Commissioner Solari. Commissioner O'Brien.
Same with me, Mr. Chairman. No site visits, but the same meeting many months ago when FP&L proposed at the time the 2 solar farms, and this is the second, but that was it.
And I myself, I have no communication, but I will be happy to disclose that we did have an envisioning of a new project coming forward many months ago, but there were no specifics, no location, and nothing to do with the project itself other than the fact that FP&L would be looking at alternative energy sources at this point.
No site visits, but a brief conversation many months ago, similar to the other commissioners, general in nature.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, no site visits, and same as my fellow commissioners, conversations discussing future plans for the 2 solar energy centers well before it got to this point, and I'll have a clear and open mind today. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we were all given the same direction many months ago. Thank you. With that, I'd like to confirm that all of our county commissioners can have an open mind and are able to base their decision on the evidence presented and applicable law. Commissioner Solari?
Yes, sir, very open mind this morning.
Same.
I can and will.
I can and will.
There you go. All right, at this point, we need to open up the public hearing, and we will open up the public hearing, and public hearing is now open, and we'll ask the clerk to swear in any and all witnesses collectively. If you have any indication that you might be speaking today, please be sworn in by Madam Clerk. Please rise.
Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. At this point, we will now go forward and have a presentation by county staff. Stan Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. This is a solar energy center, essentially a solar farm. The second one that's come before you all, called the Blue Cypress solar farm installation. It is proposed in an area that's zoned and designated on our comprehensive plan as agricultural, and as a heavy utility, it is a use that's allowed there as a special exception use. So going through the special exception process, looking at the appropriateness and compatibility and specific land use criteria. Also, there are two public hearings involved. The first public hearing's already been conducted by the Planning and Zoning Commission with their recommendation for approval. And this is the public hearing for you all to consider the request to approve with conditions, or deny the request. Overall, this is a site that's similar to the other solar farm site that you all saw last month. In terms of the overall location, State Road 60, the red line going left and right up here to the north, I-95, the green line here toward the right side of the page. The first facility that you all considered was several miles from the urban service area down near the St. Lucie County line, almost 700 acres off of 122nd Avenue. This particular site is closer to the urban service area. It's about a half mile outside the current boundary, located between 4th Street and Oslo Road on the west side of 98th Avenue. And a few differences, just a few from the other site. It's a bit smaller than the other site. The other site actually had some vacant area, quite a large vacant area as part of the proposal, because their solar farm array is set up in area to be just under 75 megawatts. This is the same, essentially same area of solar arrays, just on a little bit smaller property, 424 acres. Also, what's a little bit different about this site is there's no substation component with this, so this is really strictly just the solar arrays themselves, but with a similar layout to what you all saw last month. Again, this property is zoned and designated agricultural, agricultural 2, out again west of Interstate 95. This aerial, you can see that most of the property is citrus or former citrus property. There are a couple of isolated wetland areas on the site which will be protected. They won't be impacted by the proposed development. And there is an existing kind of a grove maintenance facility that's associated with the overall property holdings of the owner that this site was bought from for Florida Power and Light. And this property, this grove maintenance facility, has been unified with the larger holdings of the agricultural owner here to the west. So it's essentially remaining in place and will continue to serve grove property in that particular area. But as you can see from this aerial, it's all either agricultural or isolated wetlands. Same type of solar array layout that you see here, sort of the gray area where the solar panels are arranged, with access roads just for maintenance purposes that come off of 102nd Avenue. That'll be the access for the maintenance traffic. Fenced off secured facility, gated entrances, and very low trip generating use because, again, it's an unmanned facility, but there will be maintenance access. A little bit closer look here toward the north end. You can see some areas where the isolated wetland is avoided, and there's actually sort of a buffer area and special setback area around it. You can see the maintenance facility, which will essentially go with the property to the west and continue to be used as a maintenance facility for that Grove property on the west side of 102nd Avenue. And then periodically some access points for the maintenance driveways that will go in between the solar array panels themselves. Also, just to point out, the stabilized access pathways will be, again, on private property and gated at 102nd Avenue. In terms of project access route for construction, currently what's proposed by the applicant FP&L is to use 98th Avenue coming down from State Road 60. There are some existing culverts that cross 98th Avenue, and that's been a matter that's discussed in staff's report. There's also some concerned property owners that could be here at this hearing just to give their comments on it, as they did at the Planning and Zoning Commission. But essentially, there is a condition that's recommended that the Public Works Director, when a right-of-way permit is issued, that they look at the culvert crossings themselves and take whatever technical means are needed to protect the culverts. But again, the access for construction would be to the site here, just to the south side of 4th Street. Also wanted to point out what is related to the 2 solar farm proposals is a switch yard. That is not a special exception. It's sort of like a larger substation, and that's been approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's why approval is already in place, but it will serve the 2 solar farm projects. The other item that I just wanted to highlight, again, had mentioned before, the low-quality on-site wetlands, which will not be impacted by the development. Nothing is proposed in the jurisdictional area or in the buffer or setback area around those wetlands. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend that you all approve the special exception use. They also requested a modification to a recommended condition that staff had proposed at that point in time. And staff has aligned its recommendation with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. That's essentially to give the Public Works Director, whatever technical discretion he needs with respect to the culvert, protecting the culverts for the construction access. The applicants agreed to all the recommended conditions that are in staff's report, and staff's recommendation is that the board grant special exception approval for the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center with conditions related to a unity of title for the existing maintenance facility. That condition has actually already been completed, but for the record, we wanted to report that as a condition. Secondly, that the project construction access route improvements be put into place per the Public Works Director. And that's essentially sort of a technical permitting requirement that will take place in the future. And also, if there is an alternative project construction access route, something other than the current route that's been proposed, that's certainly allowed to be approved, but the applicant needs to get that approval from Public Works. With those conditions, staff recommends approval, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you, Stan. Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman, just one comment. Stan, this includes the Commissioner Solari condition that no landscaping is required, is that correct?
Well, actually, that would not apply, actually, to this one, because there's no substation with this one, so there are no landscaping requirements for this.
That should make you happy, Commissioner.
I'm always happy when people don't have to waste their money unnecessarily because of an underlying bureaucracy.
There you go.
Makes my day.
There is room for a rock garden.
Especially out there. Actually, a lot of rocks in my garden I actually got from that area there when I used to work out there.
Yes, you can diverse. Okay, any further pertinent questions of staff? Or relatable?
It was highly pertinent, Commissioner Solari.
Oh. Seeing none, Florida Power and Light, any representative have any questions of staff or further discussion? Good morning, Councilor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, thanks for getting Commissioner Solari worked up. He was all calm and everything before this. My name is Bruce Barquette. I'm here representing Florida Power and Light. As Stan, as he always does, took away all my talking points. This is the third time Florida Power and Light will be here, and I think it's the final time. The first time was just for you to determine whether we needed the public hearing regarding the transmission line. Second time was for your approval of the solar energy, solar farm. and this is the Blue Cypress project. We agree with the staff recommendations. We submitted today a preliminary report on the culvert situation for Mr. Spirica to consider, and whatever his determination is with regard to the culverts, Florida Power and Light is willing to comply with. Really hurts to say that. And I don't have anything else unless you have some questions. Ms. Krista Hendricks has a quick presentation to make for you, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Councilor. Commissioner O'Brien.
Bruce, either you or maybe the FPL folks can answer it, but I know that we're building these as 74.5 megawatts to stay below the 75 megawatt, which would trigger a
different type of review. Yes, sir.
Right. Is there any anything out there that deals with the cumulative effect of these? Is there just kind of looking down the road? You know, would we have 10 of these out there and still not undergo any more review, or where would that be?
You know, I'm not an expert on this. My belief is that the legislature made a determination that above 75 watts, the plant itself would have a greater impact. But I don't think there's anything cumulatively put out in the atmosphere or anything like, or if that's what you're asking, by 8 or more of these.
Well, I guess just say in the future they come back and they put another 74.5 megawatt farm right next to this one.
Oh.
Would that be considered a cumulative solar plan of 149 or?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I'd be happy to research it, but I don't know the answer to that.
Just curious. Thank you.
Sir.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, and this might more of a clarification on the culverts that they'll comply with whatever they recommended. Are these inter-farm culverts, or are they private from the Grove owners, or who do they belong to?
You know, I believe they were installed and belong to Graves Brothers.
Okay.
I'm not positive about that, and I think there is some legitimate concerns that the culverts are old.
Right.
The study that we submitted indicates that 2 of the culverts, well, the road will require grading to avoid bumping and everything, and 2 of the culverts should be fine based upon the proposed actions of the contractor. 2 of the other culverts, they look to be in a greater state of deterioration, and the recommendation is grade the roads, top the roads, and also put some steel plates over the culverts during the transition of some of the heavier equipment. And the contractor's prepared to do that, but Mr. Spirica has to make the final determination with regard to those.
Right. Also on that same note, I know when FP&L built the substation southeast of here, we had the access road question, and the FP&L contractor had offered to grade the road, and there was some question of would we allow them to do that or not. This will be probably not a real long construction window, I'm guessing, but if that road needs to be maintained in between our normal maintenance schedule, do we have any provisions for that if their contractor wants to grade it, or somebody other than us between our regular schedule?
Commissioner, I would say that the way the condition is written in the staff report gives the Public Works Director the discretion to require that. And Florida Power and Light has no objection to that.
Okay. I know before they had offered, and it was just
right
who should be responsible for it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any further questions? We now have the opportunity to have Florida Power and Light give us a presentation on the project.
Great, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again about our second solar energy center. My name is Krista Hendricks, for the record, and I reside at 9447 Lago Drive, Boynton Beach, 33472. I'm an FPL employee with the solar development team, and we were here before you about a month ago with the Indian River Solar Energy Center, and we're here before you today to speak a little bit about the Blue Cypress Solar Energy Center. As staff mentioned, this is a 74.5 megawatt AC solar site that is located just west of I-95 and south of 60, pretty close to the Vero Beach outlets. The project is located in the St. John's Improvement District, and it's located on approximately 424 acres of a former citrus grove. Pending all approvals and permits from Indian River County, we intend to start construction of this site this summer, and we expect to be completed by the first quarter of 2018. The image you see here is a rendering of what the site would look like once constructed. As you can see, there's 4th Street to the north or to the left of the photo. 60th is further north. As pointed out earlier, there's no substation on the site. The project will connect electrically to the Heritage Switchyard, which was previously approved. There, as you can see in between, the pathways, the stabilized access pathways, the panels, and as you can see, we've avoided the 2 wetland areas as pointed out earlier. I wanted to also point out to everyone in the room, as well as to the commission, that these sites don't require any mass grading during construction, and we do not require any concrete for the installation of the solar panels. It's pretty light to the natural surroundings of the site. The site will be connected to the adjacent switchyard, as I pointed out earlier, and we expect that this site will take about 8 to 10 months to construct. We do expect to employ or bring in about 200 to 250 new jobs to the area. And once construction is complete, the plant will operate without the use of water, fuel, or on-site personnel, such placing little to no demand on public services and no additional traffic to the area. As you can see from my beautiful slide here, these sites are virtually silent. There are no lights on at night, obviously, during construction. There will be some noise, but minimal as expected. We will not expect it to do any construction at night. But throughout, once the site is in operation, the site will not be functioning at night as there will be no sunlight. These panels will sit quietly, harvesting emissions-free energy from the sun. And like I said, these sites have no visual, noise, or any environmental impact. So we're very excited to bring the second solar facility to Indian River County. This particular site is capable of generating enough electricity annually to power about 15,000 homes. And this process and these solar energy center continues to help the state of Florida meet its emissions goals. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have, as well as our staff that's here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Commissioners? Seeing none, staff? None? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we'll see if there's anyone from the public who has any input, any discussion, anything to add to this project discussion. Good morning.
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. I have a question. Is Florida Power and Light tax exempt?
No.
They're not. So we're giving up by Florida Power and Light purchasing this, asking for this exemption. They're not taxable, so we lose tax revenue for the county.
No. Bob, the exemption is just for the land use in a ag land use and ag zoning. There's 3 things allowed. One is the normal allowed use. The other is an administrative approved use, and this is called a special exemption use. And the exemption is only allowing them to have this use on that zone property. Because they are a private company, once this is constructed, it'll go on the tax roll at its full value. So actually, this will be a net increase in ad valorem revenue to the county.
Do we know what the tax loss to the county will be or gain from this exemption?
Do we have an estimate on the value?
From one classification?
I know the one down in Martin County was, I think it was like 300 million or something, and it generated a couple million to Martin County, so.
It's not clear to me what the county is benefiting by this exemption.
Mr. Johnson, it's actually a zoning decision that's being considered by the board today. There are certain specific criteria in our zoning code that need to be considered by the board as to whether approve with conditions or deny.
Is there an answer to my question?
Well, no,
there is a net benefit to the county for increased ad valorem revenue. This will go on the tax roll as a valuable piece of property. They will be taxed at the full rate we tax everybody. This is a net benefit to the county.
This will be a net increase to the tax roll of the county.
Do we know what future plans the Florida Power and Light has for the county in these adventures?
I have not heard any. They have said that they believe these solar farms have about a 30-year life cycle, and then at that point in time, they would make a decision what they're going to do with the property at that time. But right now, they don't have any plans for those sites other than being the solar farm.
We hope they do have further plans, because this is the way of the future.
So it looks like what's happening here is that with this exemption that's occurring, that the Florida Power and Light may not have a need to buy the city power after Indian River Shores situation is resolved. Is there any consideration?
I don't think that has anything to do with the decision today.
So what you're saying is that they're not going to give up their agreement or to buy?
That would be
Mr.
highly
Johnson.
speculative, and I don't think we want to enter into that realm of Ouija board discussion or any kind of crystal ball envisionment.
My point is that we ought to be getting maybe 10 years of free power for our citizens with the approval of this. Is that something that's is unrealistic?
No, I'll answer that one. I mean, basically, Mr. Johnson, we live in a nation of laws, and some of our laws are the zoning laws. So we're here today not to set public policy in a half a dozen different ways. We're here to properly apply the zoning laws that we have on the books, which every citizen in this county should be adhering to. So if we go farther afield from that, then we're not doing our duty, and we're actually undermining our democracy by avoiding the rule of law. So it's we have no, as homeowners, we have no benefit from Florida Power. As everybody in the country has a benefit, supposedly, from the vast majority of people say, from emission-free energy. And for everybody from that I know of, 99% of the people in the country believe that emission-free energy is a very positive thing, which benefits every citizen in the country.
Your main benefit is that they're not relying upon a carbon footprint.
I'm here asking a question about the benefit to property owners with this exemption, this decision that you're getting ready to make.
And again, this is a use that is not customarily assigned to that specific zone, and it was vetted out at the planning and zoning, and they stated their case as far as the application and as far as what would be allowable, and they were granted that at a 5-0 vote. And we're here today to further hear it, and it's part of our procedure to hear the case further and approve or disapprove.
Is this building going to be provided power through that?
Bob, the power will go to the entire FPL grid, but FPL has stated that over the life of these solar farms, it will save all FPL customers money. That this will be a less expensive, long-term, reliable source of energy that over the 30-year lifespan will save all FPL customers money.
And that's truly a net gain.
How these work is, they're building the natural gas plant out further west off 60, which unfortunately is in Okeechobee County, so they'll get most of the ad valorem benefit from that. But all of the power generation goes to the grid, and the grid comes to us, it goes here, it goes there, so that you can't just say that the megawatt from the solar farm, they're going to run a special line and run it just to your house. It goes under the grid, but all FPL customers will benefit from the reduced cost of this power generation, and the state of Florida will benefit because this will be a zero emission source of energy. So not only do FPL customers benefit, but all residents of the state of Florida will benefit from it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to add to the discussion? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. For the record, I am Mike Ziegler, reside at 3375 12th Street, Vero Beach. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and County Commissioners.
Thank you for being here.
Today I represent Mr. W.C. Graves IV, and he is the property owner at the northwest corner of 4th Street and 98th Avenue, adjacent to the FP&L site. And our concern, both Mr. Graves and my concern, we have each over 40 years of experience in traveling 4th Street and 98th Avenue. If it can happen in terms of an accident, we've probably seen it. And we are very concerned about the condition of 98th Avenue south of 8th Street. As the traveler goes south from Route 60, without notice, pavement ends. There should be caution, yield, stop signs, none are apparent, and signs related to the culvert crossings. There are 4 culvert crossings. At the applicant's package, the applicant specified that there would be a suggested 1 foot of topping of millings over each of the culvert crossings. When you have about a 2,600 foot length, about a half a mile from 8th Street to 4th Street, and you have 4 100-foot milling top culvert crossings, you have intermediate graded road, which makes somewhat of a hump system through the system. We've already seen that road conditions on graded roads with very narrow shoulders off to the east into ditch D6 in the In-River Farms Drainage District. It's a very precarious situation for drivers. We understand, as we have presented before the March 23rd P&Z Committee, that we ask for a professional engineer assessment of the culvert crossings and with their recommendations. Because what we want to encourage the P&Z Committee and the County Commission to do is to ensure public safety so that we avert personal injury and property damage. We've traveled these roads so many times during our careers, over 40 years each, that it's very easy under inclement conditions that your security on travel is not certain, and particularly with over 200 employees or 100 plus employees during construction, heavy equipment, semi-trucks and whatnot, in addition to the citrus trucks pulling citrus from the remaining citrus property to the west of the FP&L site. We would encourage and respectfully request the County Commission to establish additional assessment of the culvert crossings and the roadway conditions. We do understand, as Mr. Barquette has explained, that maybe 2 of the culverts need some additional assistance. We don't have the final recommendations from professional engineers yet, but we encourage the County Commission to establish conditions that would safeguard our public and travel of that last 1/2 mile or so of 98th Avenue, south of 8th Street. North, from 8th Street north Route 60, we see crossings that have properly marked culverts, proper access for pull-off of the roadway, the paved roadway, and we see barriers protecting the drivers, but we do not see any of those attributes south of 8th Street. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. I see, Rich, has Mr. Ziegler's concerns been vetted out, addressed, and what plans do we have to ensure his understanding of the positive effect on the project, with the project?
Rich Burkett, Public Works Director. This morning at 8:23, I received an email from the engineer, one of the engineer's representatives, and then from Mr. Barquette, a engineer's study of the 4 culverts. I have briefly looked at it, and I briefly discussed them with David Gunner. We will utilize that report when we analyze the right-of-way permit that the Florida Power and Light will need to get from us. At this point in time, I can't speak to his exact needs, although we will be able to look at those as part of the right-of-way permitting process.
And any application will follow suit with practice procedures that we have for traffic
Correct.
engineering?
Correct. Now, remember, this is a dirt road. We have 250 miles of dirt road in this county. So one of the issues that he raised was shoulders and narrow. Well, that's common for dirt roads. We're not requiring FPL to completely rebuild this road. They're going to utilize that roadway in the Indian River Farms right-of-way, and we're going to ensure that the culverts are replaced and that the haul equipment in and out and workers out in a safe manner. If additional signage is needed and things like that, we will work at it during the standard right-of-way review process for an application.
So any of these buildups will be feathered in?
These buildups will be feathered in. They're going to be, again, there's some, if we go with the buildups, they'll be 1 foot thick, and they'll be feathered in 50, 75 feet each way of the culvert. So it'll be a slight bump, but nothing more than what we see on dirt roads when it rises and falls during the grading process.
And no concerns about millings being applied to a dirt road? There'll be a
No, sir.
a good cohesion.
It'll be fine.
Anything further, Mrs. Ziegler?
No, we would like to continue the discussion and visit with Mr. Spurka's office to understand more fully. We would like to make sure that we enter our voice of opinion about the public safety of traveler on that road who is not aware of the conditions of a dirt road or the narrow shoulder. Thank you.
Well, I trust that Mrs. Berger's door is always open, as well as the Green Book.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to speak? Welcome back, Mr. Johnson.
Bob Johnson, Carl Winston. I'd suggest that you table this decision until such time as Mr. Graves gets reassured properly that the county's going to take care of his situation. This requirement just occurred this morning. I mean, it didn't seem like that should be any confusion in it.
The discussion happened this morning, and I believe that we've heard that there will be a diligent address to Mr. Ziegler's concerns, and I think we've left the door open for communication, and Mr. Spurka has given us his commitment that he will follow suit to ensure that this is a safe, sound application.
The Planning and Zoning hasn't seen this change that Mr. Graves has. They didn't approve.
No, that's not what happened here.
Mr. Chairman.
Bob, actually,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ziegler did present before the public, Planning and Zoning Commission, and part of the P&Z recommendation was to include the culvert improvements and having them reviewed and all that. So P&Z did review this culvert situation, and we've incorporated it into the staff recommendation today. What we got this morning was the engineering review from Mr. Graves, but the whole culvert issue has been well vetted out at this point.
Well, I think that Mr. Graves' representative needs to be asked if this discussion this morning resolves his issue. He didn't.
I think we did, and I think we've left it where there will be further open discussion. He will have input, and that Mr. Spurka is going to do everything he can to ensure that this application is, again, safe and sound, and that Mr. Ziegler's concerns were dispelled. I asked Mr. Ziegler that, and Mr. Ziegler, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. 2 points of clarification. The property owner is W.C. Graves IV. Mr. Barquette referenced Graves Brothers, so it should be known as W.C. Graves IV.
Yes.
And the other part is that right now, both Mr. Spurka and ourselves have received the preliminary report. I think Mr. Spurka has received a final report. We would like to have privilege of reviewing that for consideration and discussion with the Public Works Office and the P&Z if that's necessary, certainly the Commission. But we just don't know enough about it yet.
Counselor.
No, sir, we object to that. He can talk to the Public Works Department, that's fine, but we agreed to comply with the Public Works Director's directive, as every other applicant does, on how to treat this 98th Avenue and the culvert. But we do not want to bring it back before the County Commission. We're entitled to a hearing today and to a decision today. And Mr. Johnson is incorrect. It was brought up before the Planning and Zoning Commission. The only reason that you're hearing about it now is because my client took the impetus to hire an engineer to get the report in, and we just got it in last night. Otherwise, this would be after the fact. You wouldn't be making this decision. I mean, Mr. Spirica wouldn't be making this decision until next week. So no, we will not consent to having a continuance of this hearing or to bringing this matter back before the County Commission.
I don't foresee a contingency, Counselor, as far as I'm concerned, unless I hear otherwise, and we have a difference of opinion here on the board. I believe that we are going forward today, and you are welcome to discuss this further with Mr. Spurka. You can have your input, but this was well vetted out, and again, as Counselor said, at the P&Z, and it was further discussed, and there is documentation which will be submitted into the file as well, and you are welcome to speak with our county staff to ensure that the very best in safety and security for this application is done, and that it's done soundly.
Thank you.
Okay, but we're not going to alter the course of this event based on the concern of the buildup over the water, the culverts, and
That's not our intent. Our intent is to raise the awareness of the need for public safety. That's the intent.
and I think we've just done that.
I think you've done that. Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak or add to the discussion? Commissioners, any questions or Florida Power and Light about anything we've heard from the public? At this point, we'll move to the final presentation argument, if any, by county staff. Staff?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
You rest. And we'll move to Florida Power and Light. Counselor? Thank you. Florida Power and Light rests. At this point, we'll want to make sure that all documentation, tangible evidence, if any, have been admitted to evidence and are in the hands of the clerk. Madam Clerk? Thank you. The county staff agenda materials are also automatically admitted into evidence unless there's any objection. Is there any discussion on any documentation that's moving forward? At this point, we will close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead and move staff recommendation with the 3 conditions as presented in the backup.
Second.
That's might have to call the council in for a decision on that, but I think I'll make it. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, 2 questions more between some of the discussion that I believe Commissioner O'Brien had brought up. Once this goes forth and it's built, it will be taxed in a little bit different manner than the Martin County project since the solar amendments passed in the state. So it may not be as robust as Martin County's revenue that they received because that was done prior to some of the solar amendments that passed. But it will obviously add an increased amount into the county tax system, but maybe not as robust as the Martin County that was done prior to the solar amendments that passed last year.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Let the power begin. At this point, we have public discussion. We have a request to speak by Rob Volsky from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints regarding the 9th Annual Indian River County Day of Service, justserve.org. Good morning, Rob.
Morning.
Thank you.
I've got a little poster here I would like to share on the overhead. Just wanted to make sure that it lined up properly. That's it. I got lucky. My name's Rob Volsky. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm here to present and to invite on two separate issues. The first one is the 9th Annual Indian River County Day of Service, which is to be held this Saturday, April 22nd, 2017. We will be meeting this Saturday at the church to have a kickoff gathering, and after that point, volunteers, we're expecting about 200 volunteers, will then be splitting off into 10 separate projects around the county. Now, we've been here before, just about once a year we've come over here and met some of you and received your endorsement and blessing on this in the past, and we hope to be able to include you, perhaps one of you at our kickoff. So that's the invite part. To just review some of the things that we've done to organize this. This year, the projects that we've lined up include some that we've done before and a few new ones too that we're excited about. The Environmental Learning Center is always popular with families, and so it's a safe place for kids to go and learn to volunteer for the first time too. Florida Veggies and More. That's probably a lesser known place. It's a garden, hydroponic garden and aquaponics facility that recycles the tilapia water to raise the next cycle of plant growth for vegetables that are then provided to the poor and the needy in the community. Shining Light Garden Foundation is a larger farm out off of 49th Street, and it is going to be accepting the junior class of 2018 from St. Edward's Upper School as their volunteer base this year. We were excited to be able to go on the radio with the representative of he's the president of the junior class, Peyton Cleveland, and we were very proud of that young man and his efforts in promoting volunteerism at St. Edward's Upper School amongst his classmates. Habitat for Humanity Restore is a popular place for us to serve. Again, some of these agencies serve people on a daily basis, and we're going to go help them do whatever they would like us to do, stocking shelves, moving stuff around in the warehouse, to help introduce new volunteers to that facility as well. United Against Poverty, the UP Center, formerly known as Harvest Food and Outreach. I've always been very impressed with the work that they do in the community directly to help the poor and the needy. So we're sending about 36 volunteers from First Presbyterian Church, and we're thankful for these large groups that have been coming out to support the day of service. American Red Cross Vehicle Wash got swept up and adopted by our local youth from our church, and so they're going to be sending out a volunteer team of about 15 youth with Bishop Johnson. Some of the projects are going to be, because this is Earth Day related, April 22nd is Earth Day, the rest of the projects are going to be outdoor cleanups through CURB, Keep Indian River Beautiful. So in cooperation, partnership with CURB, we've set up 4 rather large cleanups for the county. One is the Oslo Road to the boat ramp cleanup. That always picks up a lot of trash for some reason. Gifford Dock Park, Dale Winbro Park off of Roseland Road, and a massive neighborhood cleanup at Old Dixie Road around 295 Old Dixie Road. There's a small church there. We're going to divide up and go out into the community and clean up that community. That's sometimes a more popular volunteer project because people feel they're directly impacting a community, and the community comes out as well to help and say, hey, what are you doing? Can I help? And jump in. We are sanctioned by the DOT requirements to wear orange vests if we're near the city streets, and children have been redirected to the parks or the church area to stay away from crowded streets, and instructions will be handed out to the volunteers of how to work safely up and down that street. Some of the statistics. This is something we've been doing for 9 years now as a result of kind of a split off from the humanitarian efforts that were executed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints around the world after disasters. And the leadership of the church decided that we needed more help in the communities on a more regular basis than when disasters occur, and couldn't we possibly do something to help the communities. And so over a period of 9 years, you just think about the numbers, just for the 1 day of service we've had every year, that's approximately resulted in 1,800 volunteers, or 9,000 volunteer hours. And if you work that out at a conservative rate of pay, or for the average 5 hours that someone might dedicate, more or less, that comes out to about a $180,000 value. This is 1 day a year, 4 hours in a day of service. It's not even a full day of service, it's a half day of service. But a lot of people like that format. If you've ever been out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon working hard, you probably can appreciate that. So we've included over 20 different civic, business, and faith-based organizations in this effort from year to year, and that's provided an opportunity for people to work shoulder to shoulder with one another regardless of their political or religious differences. They drop all of that and get to know one another, and friends have been made. Over 20 different agencies have been served that I could list. But you know all the agencies in town, where we continue to encourage everyone to come out and to participate. But I could list 20 different groups and businesses, faith-based organizations, the city of Vero Beach. This year, the Indian River Medical Center has provided a number of their leaders to come out and to help to work side by side with one another, get to know each other a little better. Temple Beth Shalom, Unity Center, First Presbyterian Church, and in the past, the Civil Air Patrol, businesses like Walgreens managers. We've already seen what volunteerism can do from the proclamation earlier. I won't reiterate what that says. Clearly, there's an understanding that this has some value. The second thing that I'd like to present and invite with is a website produced by the church called justserve.org. And you have those materials in front of you. And I'll remove this for now because we're done talking about the day of service. We hope everybody can show up, that this becomes public, and we can spread the word about the day of service this Saturday at the church, 8 o'clock. Register online at www.ircdayofservice.org. There, that's enough about that. The second thing I'd like to split off and talk about a little bit is Just Serve. Here's an opportunity for those people who in the community have enjoyed their day of service but want to serve more than once a year, who want to come out any day that they can possibly schedule on their own time and at their own convenience. Just Serve is a website that provides people with, well, I asked Scott, is Scott here? Can we set up a little video to show and click on that? This will give you an idea what Just Serve is about.
One of the things that we have a lot of questions from the community, from faith-based organizations, is how do we give back to the community? How can we get involved? the Just Serve program has basically allowed us to give volunteers a direction.
It allows you to go in, find something that fits your personality, your family.
If I could sit down with another council member in another city that was either looking at this or had talked about it, I think what I would say to them and what I have said to them is that this is one of those types of programs that will again help your city to be a success.
I just love volunteering here because it kind of takes me out of myself and puts me into the community, and it just makes me feel like I'm making a difference.
So there it is in a nutshell. I can't say it any better than that. This is the go-to volunteer website in New York City, and it's promoted in California. Southern California is very popular, in San Diego. In partnership with the Padres, it's on the big billboards at the games there, and also very well and well used since 2011 in that area. So this is opening up in this area. The question that I would like to pose to county commissioners is, do we want to run with this? Do we want to go forward and make volunteerism have a greater impact in this city and county as we move forward, and then open up for any questions that people might have?
Thank
So-
you, Rob. Commissioners?
Nope. Thank you for all your great work in the community. We really appreciate it. The community appreciates it.
Thank you. You have my address and information. If anyone there in the commission has a particular event or focus on volunteerism, please feel free to contact me. Again, Just Serve will not work without the promotion in the community. It's great to list a number of organizations. We've already got about 17 listed out of maybe close to 100 or 200. We'd like the city, the county, and the members of the community to own this and to freely submit projects that they think would be appropriate. So basically, this is a gift to the city.
Well, Rob, you have my commitment for an open line of communication. I have to say that I truly, over the years, have enjoyed your commitment to just doing it, just doing what needs to be done. Your involvement with CURB, your involvement with the Environmental Learning Center, the environment, and just wanting to have a positive impact in the community through volunteerism, and including everyone, not just one specific group. You invite all, and everybody gets a task. And it's a very rewarding experience, and we appreciate all the efforts that you do in Indian River County.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. We hope to see you out there Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda was a request to speak by Mr. Fred Mensing. I don't see him here. If it pleases the board, if he responds before...
He notified us he would not be able to make it today.
He will not make it?
That's correct.
Okay. Then we'll just move right forward to Public Works. We have a discussion on the award of a bid number 2017034, County Road 512, westbound resurfacing, Roseland Road to US 1, and County Road 512, eastbound resurfacing, Easy Street to US 1. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rich Berg, Public Works Director. Back in March of 2016, the board approved a small county outreach program grant from DOT. We subsequently bid the project in February of 2017. There were 3 bidders: Ranger Construction, Tim Rose Contracting, and Community Asphalt. During the review of the 3 bids, we needed to request additional information to ensure that the contractors all had qualifications for full depth reclamation process, which is what we're going to be using on 512. Subsequently, the additional information yielded that Tim Rose Construction had the qualifications. Ranger, we originally were bringing this to the board in April, early April. Ranger Construction protested the bid, and they subsequently have withdrawn their protest. Funding for the agreement is $2,400,000 from DOT, and the county's portion is $1,087,000. The funding is available in the secondary roads resurfacing of County Road 512. Staff recommends the board approve award to the lowest responsible bidder, Tim Rose Contracting, $3,491,545.38. And staff further recommends the board authorize the chairman to execute the attached agreement upon review and approval of both the agreement and the required public construction bond by the county attorney as to form and legal sufficiency, and the receipt and approval required by the insurance by the risk manager. Any
Rich,
questions?
you say full depth removal or reclamation. That's all of the asphalt is totally removed?
No, not removed. What we do is you grind the asphalt and existing base up, big rototiller, and you go in there and you pulverize it. And in this particular case, we're going to add an asphalt emulsion. It's basically a binding agent. And what you do is you grind it and you add this to make a full 9 inches, in this particular case, of thick base. Basically, it's like black base, but it's cheaper. It's a good process if you know what you're doing, because it's a touchy process. It's like baking a cake. If you put too much water in it, it ain't going to be good. If you don't put enough, same problem. So you have to have the right qualifications to do this. In this particular case, Tim Rose Construction subcontracts to a company that we use quite often internal to reclaim some of our roadways as part of our resurfacing and reclamation project internally.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move staff recommendation that the board approve to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Timothy Rose Construction, and with the approval of both the agreement and required public construction bond by the county attorney as to the form and legal sufficiency, and the receipt and approval is required by the insurance by the risk manager.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion here amongst the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Rich, as you know, I've had fielded numerous complaints of the 8th Street sidewalk job by Mr. Rose's company. And they, through the length of that job, they did get a little better. In the beginning, there was many times no signage for workmen ahead. There was many times no flagman on the site. There was many times just a lot of, I'm just really glad nobody got run over on that job, because the lack of safety awareness for the oncoming traffic. Since I do travel 8th Street 4 to 5 times a day, it was very much in front of me, but I really relied on complaints, whether it was from the Thomases or the Whites or other, can't remember the other folks' names along the route. Those are just my ones I had conversations with again yesterday from problems from last week on the job. If that was I don't know if this is the right terminology, but a DOT safety compliant type job with proper flagman, signage, notification, 1-lane closure, traffic, that didn't work real well on that job. How will it work well on a bigger scale job?
Okay, this job requires that, in this case, Tim Rose Contracting provide a signed and sealed engineering MOT plan. This is not a simple job like 8th Street.
Okay.
So that plan will be devised, reviewed by staff, and signed and sealed by an engineer. So they will know exactly where to put the barrels. There'll be no second guessing. They'll know everything that needs to be done on time. Our inspector, full-time inspector, will have that same plan. And if he doesn't adhere to the MOT plan, there will be consequences.
So we do have abilities like to either stop the job, get in compliance,
Absolutely.
or put some teeth into it. And lastly, and I know we needed to get water on the grass on that street, but waiting behind, and the school bus is waiting behind that truck with no signage, no flagman. It just said wide load on the truck. It was a truck on top of a truck, essentially. It did get the water on the grass. It did come back, so that's a good part. But there was a lot of frustrated travelers along that street. And I also, other than the section that's not poured I've walked the entire length of the project, just from where it concludes, where it tied into the existing pieces down towards 8th Street, going all the way back through. And along that way, a lot of neighbors just wanted to express their frustration with, they would go over it with what appeared to be a foreman on the job, and they would say, yes, I've got it, and then they would go to work and come back and partially block driveways or piles of sand on the sidewalk or other things, because either there was a shift in employees that were on the job, and I know it's a moving job, so you do have that, but just a number of frustrated folks along the path. But will there be any DOT supervision, or will this be somebody like Chip or somebody else from your office that'll?
It'll be one of our inspectors.
Okay.
Possibly two.
Yeah, with the size of that job, it might, and I know he's got other jobs in progress, but those will probably be finished by the time this gets completely ramped up. But based on the number of issues I've received on that street, I'm inclined not to be supportive of this particular award because of the complaints from those other residents.
You know, not to reduce the concerns of the residents, and I'm sure that as any project goes, that there are some complications. There was some complications with another contractor up north for one of the roadway improvements, and whether it's weather, whether it's supply of material, and or compliance with manpower, those do arise. And if the applicant that was their only project, I would say, well, now I have a cause for concern. But the applicant has done hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs and realizing that we have to look at everything independently, but the track record is there for great success. I mean, there might have been complications in one project, but I don't think...
Well, I could do other projects. I had numerous complaints on the Oslo Road from 43rd Avenue to 58th West. So this isn't the first one. Back to the 8th Street issue, it was primarily worker safety first. Job being done in compliance. I think the job is done all to our correct standards. It's not so much that, it's more of the operational side of the contract, of who's where and when, and making sure people aren't, you know, when they're working literally in some cases 6 inches off the edge of the roadway and there's no safety notification to oncoming traffic that there's workers present, and you know how distracted folks are. It's very easily, somebody could have gotten hit, but fortunately nobody did. Going back to Chris Mora's days, we had a number of discussions on the Oslo Road job. So this isn't the first one. And I went through a list of other items that were reported to me from some of the folks I spoke with the last few days to Mr. Spurka, that he, and I know if we have 2 people on the job that are out there watching it, that's good, but I don't travel that area as often, but I will make it a point to, and if something doesn't seem right, obviously I'll reach out to you and you'll go to where it needs to. But the complaints I've had between the Oslo Road job a couple of years ago and what I've visually seen in the complaints I've received on here is where I'm basing my opinion.
Staff understands the concerns. We'll make sure that with our inspectors, we're ensuring that the MOT plans are adhered to throughout this project.
Agreed.
We have your commitment, Mrs. Barker. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, as always. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public wishing to speak regarding this matter? Commissioners?
We have a motion and a second. We're just waiting for you to call the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with 4-1 with Commissioner Zorc dissenting. I just want to make sure if you had any further comments. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Next item is County Attorney's Matters, which is consideration of a mediated settlement agreement, Jenkins versus Indian River County, Circuit Court Case Number 312014, CA 911.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Commissioners.
Counsel.
Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Back in 1980, the Board of County Commissioners, 1980s I should say, the Board of County Commissioners was looking for an east-west connection between US 1 and I-95. They discussed 49th Street, but turned that down because there were too many residences involved there. So they settled on 53rd Street, even though there was a sand mine operation run by the Jenkins, which had that big pond across it. Further on, planning started in-house, both surveying and planning, and in the 90s, the county purchased property from the Jenkins. It consisted of a 150-foot swath through the existing sand mine pit that was there. It was conditioned upon filling that area, not up to road grade standards, but filling the area where the proposed 53rd Street would go. If we move on further in the 90s, when that project was added to the capital improvement element, we move into 2000, when construction started. In 2009, the county realized, after developer agreements with DeVosta, developer agreements with Tarmac and Rinker, that a 4-lane solution would be a good project for this area, and went back to Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins and got a 100-foot temporary construction easement necessary for construction of the road. In 2011, after the road was opened in December, it was discovered that the temporary construction easement had now become a permanent source of fill necessary to support the roadway on that project. The 2.8 acre excuse me, temporary construction easement was now permanent. We were notified by the Jenkins family through their attorney, Mr. Gorman, that we had added that fill on their property. They claimed that they were entitled to compensation. They filed suit in inverse condemnation. That's a little bit different than eminent domain. It adds a few little barbs to the whole process, which you can see in your agenda item that's set before you. So through the discovery process, initially, the first survey that came through showed the encroachment onto the Jenkins property. Back in December, the county commissioned Morgan and Eklund to do a second survey with side-sounding radar or sonar to be able to see exactly where the soil was and to get an accurate picture of everything in preparation for trial. It was discovered at that time that the soil had moved. Much like when you have a pile of dirt in your backyard and it rains, you will see that that soil spreads out. This was the same thing that was happening here, that we were moving our pile of dirt more onto the Jenkins property and increasing the encroachment. Mediation took place last month, attended by Bill Doney, our outside counsel, Mr. Spirica, and I were the other participants in it, and we reached a settlement with the Jenkins family. We started out thinking that a slope easement would be sufficient. After discussing with council the movement of the dirt that was evident from the surveys that we had, quickly found that we should go with a fee simple taking rather than just a slope easement. We were at $250,000 for the initial offer. The Jenkins were at $466,000, and we worked out a settlement agreement for $375,000, which we're asking you to consider today, along with some important caveats. The settlement agreement, as noted in your agenda item, would include a full release of previous, current, and future damages from the fill. This is important because they will not be able to come back and say that we're encroaching further onto their property. This will end the litigation and the county's exposure once and for all. As stated, one of the barbs in an inverse condemnation suit is the attorney's fee. Attorney's fees can be taken either on an hourly rate, depending on the experience and the duration of the matter, or it can be used, or the attorney's fee can be determined on the statutory rate, which is 33% of the first $250,000 benefit gain for the client, plus 20% of any benefit thereafter up to $1 million. Here, since there was no offer made in an inverse claim, the attorney's fee is figured from ground zero, so the fee in this case is $113,750,000. The other barb that we're exposed to as well in an inverse case is one of interest. Once we determined that the judgment through mediation would be $375,000, the statute says that the amount of interest and the rate is determined from the date of take. We stipulated that the date of take was from the opening day of the road, which was December 2011, and the interest there is $94,765. Expert witness fees and court costs made up an additional $41,000, so that the total acquisition price for the Jenkins matter is $624,248.98. Staff's recommendation in this matter is to go ahead and accept the mediated settlement with the payouts encompassed in that settlement agreement, simply as a matter of containing our losses, and as I stated, that we would get that all-important release from future damages as a result of this matter. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Counselor.
I have a couple. One, I should say I'll be supportive of bringing this to a resolution, and I know each time this is a little different than our other types of taking cases, but they all result around a value that what's the person willing to take. What's the estimated cost for our outside counsel, our outside experts, our outside surveyors? It's not included in this, and they could just be ballpark. They don't have to be actual numbers, but I know we had folks representing us. You obviously spent a lot of time on it, and I think Dylan kind of came in, and it was well underway, I think, when you had started here, so I don't know how much, and I don't want to say you're free, but you're here. But what type of, you're a fixed cost. What do you think our additional outside services, surveying, legal expert, do we have that either we've paid along the way since we started or that are pending?
The survey that we obtained was $8,500, I believe. Our attorney's fees would be in the range of $20,000 at this point, and our expert fees are very similar. We used obviously an engineer to help us with this matter. We went local with Brian Good and Kimley Horn. So since there was good local knowledge there, we decided to use a local engineer who testifies well, and I've seen Brian, and you've seen Brian here appear before the board and did some good work for us. Our appraisal was there as well. We used Mr. Spivey, as we have in the past. And so our costs would be in the neighborhood of the $40,000 figure that was absorbed by the Jenkins, or incurred by the Jenkins as well.
Right. So then we're 470-ish, I mean, excuse me, 670 for the total cost. And I should probably fully disclose, I played on this property when I was a kid, when it was Jenkins Raceway, went to school with the Jenkins. So over the years, there have been conversations, and one thing before both of the family members, now the parents have both passed on, is that's at some way we've got to figure out if the county has an appraisal, the seller has an appraisal, can we take a quick snapshot look and go, okay, here's theirs, here's ours. Is there something we want to offer in the middle? Get it back to them and skip the $315,000 that benefits nobody. I mean, it doesn't benefit the seller, or in this case, the inverse taking side. But I will work on bringing back a suggestion of, and not that it'll work, but I think in the event to save $310,000 that didn't benefit the property owner, and it cost the taxpayers that we really have to look at more creative ways in resolving these. And I've heard similar comments from some of my commissioners to the right, excluding Ms. Adams, because we haven't had one of these since you've been here. But they are always painful to watch, to say the least.
Dealing with legal is usually painful.
Well, and I think what we have tried to do, we've heard that direction from the board, and as we've gone, we've tried to. I think you'll find usually when Bill brings an item for a right-of-way purchase, there is that analysis of, this is how much, here's a good case, here's a good scenario at trial, here's a bad scenario at trial, which includes all of those expert fees and attorney's fees. So I think that does go into the analysis. I'm not saying that the process we have is perfect by any means, but these are always painful. The process is set up to protect the private property owner's rights,
Right.
since it's the
Which we
government
want
taking property. So the numbers are always challenging for me to swallow, I can say, being the cheapskate, that I always have a hard time with those numbers. But we try to weigh those things and have tried to avoid going through a condemnation type of case. And in this one in particular, there was no such process because it was an inverse condemnation.
That's correct.
So we didn't have an opportunity to make an offer. We were presented with the inverse condemnation claim. So.
But I suppose we could have, when they submitted their claim, did they submit their appraisal at that time? Or they just filed the...
Yes, they submitted their appraisal. They filed the suit and submitted their appraisal later.
Well, and regardless, the way I understand it, the attorney's fees are set compared to zero, not compared to what we first offered, which would be like a normal right-of-way acquisition. So we're mindful of that in those cases, but I think in this one, those fees are based off of zero. So the higher we go, regardless of what we do, the more those attorney's fees are going to be.
Right, unless a seller felt the offer they received was fair and didn't go the legal route, and that's a very hard thing because there's a lot of legal mills that love the eminent domain process. They make very good living at representing property owners, and I think they have a mailing campaign to say, hey, if your road's ever widen, contact us. So that's a big shift in the public perception of what do you do when the county says they want to widen the road in front of you. They call the firm in Orlando or the one in West Palm or the ones that we see fairly frequently, but that's my venting for today. Thank you. Good job on getting it done, and I know Rich spent a long time in that 6-hour process, as well as all the remaining family members on the Jenkins side. So glad it's been brought to some type of resolution that everybody seems as happy as we can be.
And I do want to add that there's, those law firms that specialize in this, we do have to make sure that we are getting a good deal for the taxpayers at these mediations. So we can't roll over too much. It's kind of like the situation where sometimes we may receive local governments and entities everywhere receive frivolous lawsuits all the time. Some places will get in the habit of settling something for $5,000 so they don't have to go to trial. And that may work individually on that one case, but then if you become an easy $5,000 payday for every law firm out there, you'll get covered with $5,000 settlements. So you have to look at the overall picture there too, as well. That we have to make sure we're getting a good deal at mediation for the taxpayers as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zorc. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak or add any input regarding this matter? Seeing none. And fellow commissioners?
Yeah, I just concur with a lot of Commissioner Zork's concerns. I've always hated these, and I certainly understand it's designed to make sure a property owner is protected, but when some of these expert witnesses start throwing out their appraisals and stuff, it just seems outrageous, and then we get stuck between a rock and a hard place. So these are always ugly and painful.
And again, the law is slighted towards the local government that has to pay for all of the expertise from both ends, and it's sometimes an abhorrent cost. We have a gentle reminder of the ride through the 66th Avenue expansion, which we had these on a regular basis. I want to commend staff and outside counsel for doing everything they can to minimize the expense factor to the taxpayer and making the individual whole again as best we can without breaking the bank. But it is a very difficult decision, and it's one that fortunately doesn't come too often, but when it does, we know that staff has done everything they can to minimize. So thank you. And we have the customary silence before the decision.
There's no other discussion. I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the mediated settlement agreement and authorize the chairman to execute any documents in furtherance of the agreement on behalf of the board.
Second.
And we have a motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you once again, Counselor.
I just want to thank Bill. This is one of those
Yes.
items that existed before I got here, and it's nice to see Bill bringing that in for a landing.
Thank you. To a conclusion. Next item, and the final item, is a resolution supporting the Local Zoning Decisions Protection Act of 2017. Counselor.
Thank you very much. On April 4th, 2017, the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners directed the County Attorney's Office to draft a resolution supporting the Local Zoning Decisions Protection Act of 2017. This bill would nullify the 2015 HUD final affirmatively furthering fair housing rule. The bill would also eliminate the HUD assessment tool that is required to be used by local governments, and would also prevent federal dollars from being used to build a federal database that would be used as part of the affordable housing considerations. The attached resolution supports that bill. The resolution is proposed to be sent to Representative Posey, Senator Nelson, Senator Rubio, and on to the President. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board take public comment, if there is any, and then vote to approve the resolution. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out two things that actually come from the resolution. The first is that Indian River County supports the Fair Housing Act itself. I don't think there's any issue with that. I think that's fine. We all want good, fair housing. But another portion of the resolution notes that there are many people who feel that the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule and assessment tool will impede local control on zoning and land use issues. And I think that is the key to our disagreement with this. We'd rather keep local planning, zoning, and land use decisions in Indian River County, whether it's by this Board of County Commissioners or any one of the municipalities. So with that said, I'd be very happy to move the resolution.
Second.
Well, that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Is there any discussion from the public regarding this matter? Any further input? And yes, Commissioner Solari, well agreed. I think we've all exhibited that we fully support equitable, fair, priced housing, and we have done a lot of good work and cooperation, but it's the collateral clause that make this thing a little sour. So, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, before you bang the gavel?
Well, I already did that, but I didn't say meeting adjourned, so I guess we can...
I just wanted to...
Gavel?
It's what?
It's implied in the gavel.
It's implied? All right, please, go ahead.
I want to pass on to my fellow commissioners a sincere thank you from Gail Kavanaugh, who was able to watch live the presentation of her kind of lifetime achievement recognition last week. I went and visited with her afterwards, and she said she didn't realize how many lives she had touched through her career, and was very elated that we took the time out to recognize her, and she gives all of us her best.
She may not have realized how many lives she's touched, but we most certainly do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, and
Thank you,
for
Mr.
that
Chairman.
update. Seeing no further, meeting adjourned.